you had a couple of British drivers behind you, Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton. I wondered how that moment would have been for you. I mean, being chased down by those two is special, but I guess Lewis Hamilton is a hero of yours, right?
Yeah, I was growing up in the era when he was with McLaren, 2011, 12, 13. That's when I remember him. The beautiful chrome McLaren.
What a car, by the way.
It's the most
Sounded
one of the,
amazing, looks amazing.
Great era, and really beautiful car. And him and Jensen were the home heroes, and I was great supporters of both of them. I remember actually going to Silverstone, I think it was either 2014 or 15, when it rained at the end, and I'm pretty sure Lewis won, and that was my first experience of watching a race in real life. But anyway, being on track with them, first of all, was quite an honor. It happened that, there was about 20 laps to go, and I knew that they both pitted onto softs. And when I saw, I was looking at the screen and watching the television as I was driving. And
yeah, you might need to just explain that for people. So you're driving a Formula One car at speeds of up to 190?
Something like that.
And you're also taking the time to look at the big screens that are around the circuit for the spectators.
Yeah, I find them really useful because sometimes they're angled in a way that you can see, and you can see the gaps to the cars in front, but also you can see what's going on. And as I was going down the main straight one lap, I could see the cameras were pointed on Lando and Lewis in the pit lane, so I knew they were boxing, and I knew that they would come out on a soft tire. And yeah, then I got the info from my engineer. I could see that they were 10 or so seconds behind me. At that stage, I almost, I let them have it. I knew that they were going to come past me, on a new soft, and, they were quite a bit quicker. But it just so happened that, with 10 or so laps to go, the gap was dropping by about a second a lap, and then it got to about stalemate with 5 or so seconds between us. And, with 5 laps to go, I realized, actually, I could stay in front of these two. So I started pushing on and on and on. And yeah, when the flag came, the gap was still the same. So that was quite a proud moment.
So nice. Did Lewis have some words for you afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, he was the first one to see me after the race. He, shook my hand and congratulated me. And of course, that was a very special moment, having watched this guy who's been racing in F1 since I was born, and to finally share the track with him. Actually, I received a video message from him in 2016. I just won the British Karting Championship, and I think, through a friend, he'd sent me a message and said congratulations, and, keep pushing and stuff like this. And I only received that, I only re-received that recently. But, it just shows that I was looking up to these guys, and now one day, in the future, I will share the track with them. It's an honor.
Look, that gave me goosebumps. That 8 years after you get a video message from Lewis when you're in karting, you're on the same track as him.
Yeah.
And keeping him behind you.
Yeah, that was an added bonus for sure.
People might not know that the nickname of Formula One for those inside it is the Piranha Club, right? Because people can attack each other at any given moment. What was Charles Leclerc like with you?
He was super helpful.
Yeah.
I think he understood the difficulty of the position I was in, and he was helping me through the sessions, especially before qualifying. And even I think he could tell I was a little bit nervous. And
so the first time that you see him after you've had the news, and he's obviously been given the news as well, what did he come over and say? Did you know that less than half of Brits eat breakfast every day of the week? I mean, that's amazing. But why? Well, it's because we're all time poor, especially in the mornings. So we compromise. My fix is Huel's nutritionally complete high-protein shake, a complete meal in a bottle that slots perfectly into my life. Head to the link in the description for a free t-shirt on your first order with Huel. How can you resist that?
I struggle to remember. First of all, I think he said congratulations and, of course, happy for me. But the thing I remember that he helped me with was before the race, we sat down with him and also Fred, and he was helping me a little bit because I hadn't done any long runs. So I hadn't done more than 2 pushes in a row before doing the race. So, it's a bit of a different scenario driving in the race versus the qualifying. And he gave me a bit of insight about, the tyre behavior and stuff like that, stuff that I hadn't experienced yet. And it's a little detail, but it's super helpful. And it's something that I didn't get to experience in my one free practice session. So, these small little tips and insights were priceless for me in the situation I was in.
It's a mark, though, of him as a man as well, that he made sure he took the time. Because, the first person you want to beat in Formula One is your teammate, right? It is a rivalry as well as being in the same team. I think it's a mark of him that he made sure he took the time to offer you as much advice as you needed.
Yeah, I've always really been a big fan of Charles. I was teammates with Arthur, his brother in F3, and naturally we were all supporting Charles in that year. And yeah, he's been performing really, really well. And that weekend, I knew him a little bit before. We'd met a few times, but that weekend I really kind of saw what type of a person he was. I gained a lot of respect for him because, there was no obligation to do something like this. And yeah, I really appreciated it. And it seemed like a little, word here and there for him, but for me it meant a lot. And I really appreciated it.
Nice. And what about Carlos Sainz? Because obviously he's got other things on his mind. The reason why he's not racing is because he's having an appendix operation, right?
Yeah. First of all, I have to say that it wasn't the circumstances that I wanted to make my F1 debut, and I know Carlos was would have preferred to be on track himself. But when an opportunity like this comes, you have to be ready, and I was. Carlos was there on race day in the garage, standing with the engineers, and actually I spoke to him after the race, and he was saying, a few things that the engineers wanted me to say. He wanted to say to me, he was telling them not to because it would have been a bit of an overload of info. But also during the race, he was seeing some things that were happening, looking at my driving and giving some pointers, what to change on my driving and what to change on the car setup itself. Right?
So he was watching the race, and then what he was telling the engineers to give you that advice, or he was coming on the radio?
He was telling them what to tell me, basically. So yeah, that was pretty nice. And, he's been in that situation and he knows what the driver wants. So I found that really useful.
And what did he say to you before the race started?
First of all, he sent me a message after the qualifying to say, first of all, it's a tough track and good job because it's a bit of a headache in qualifying, specifically with the tyres in Jeddah. It's quite tough to have them ready for the whole lap and prepare them, and that's something I missed out on as well. I didn't really know how to prepare the tyres, so he said, just get through the first lap pretty cleanly or words to that effect, and I wished him the best for his surgery. And yeah, it was great to see that he came back to the circuit the next day. He'd been through a lot, so that was really cool.
It's nice. And what advice did he offer you before the race started?
Honestly, not much. Before the race, I was mainly speaking with the engineers from my side or his side of the garage. I spoke briefly with Jock Clear, who's leading the FDA, and he's actually Charles's driver coach, and he offered me quite a decent amount of insight. Even Marc Genet, who works for Ferrari, and he told me he was actually in a similar situation to me, that he got called up last minute, and he knows what it's like, and he offered me a bit of help too. But honestly, my focus, I just wanted to get through lap one, have a clean start, which isn't easy in F1. It's very tight, and lap one is where you make the difference, so everyone's pretty aggressive. I wanted to just get through there, and I knew that once I got into the race and found some rhythm, that I would be fine. Of course, there is a risk with the walls and everything, but I knew that the more laps I did, the better I would be, and I think I showed that. At the end, I was the fastest I was in the entire race. I just kept building it up.